Hello!
Hello, AOS fans!
It's the agents of the Wyrdhollow.
It's that time again.
It is.
It seems to come round much faster these days.
I mean, it must have been like 6 months since the last one.
Exactly, that's why it seems faster. Because they are every 6 months now, as we know, rather than every year. We have a new core box to show you. This isn't the box, this is the rules, but it is the Wyrdhollow.
Box is similar looking, just thicker, and it has some other text.
You know the drill.
Yes.
So we thought we'd quickly run over the changes that are in Wyrdhollow now. GW do seem to be sorted. This is almost like a half release rather than a full release, and there aren't as many rule changes as there are on the sort of October releases.
Don't seem to be, yeah.
So it's a fairly brief video, although as regular viewers will know, we can make the briefest of things take the longest of times.
Exactly. We're going to go through the contents of the box or anything notable in there, and the rules themselves as well, just so we're going to try and cover it all in one go. Box
content is pretty much the same as usual. We've got a load of new tokens. I think they're slightly different colours on the reverse side.
Yeah,
The dice are a different colour for everybody wanting more dice that are a different colour. One interesting thing is that neither Rivals deck has a plot card.
Yeah, neither of them do.
No, so that's quite good. For all the people who were sort of saying the sky was falling in on the championship front, they will both be valid for championship play.
They will.
Yeah, and intriguingly, in the rule book, there's a section on deck building, and there actually now is a whole section devoted to Nemesis, and a whole section devoted to
open play. It's not championship play. The championship is a sub-format.
Yeah, so you'll still need to refer to the documents that they put on their website, but the open play thing, it doesn't mention plot cards at all.
No.
So we obviously don't know whether the championship or relic rule pack that they put on the website will mention plot cards, but in Narwood, the rules specifically mentioned that you could only use one plot card, and they didn't differentiate Nemesis. In this game, they're split out, and it doesn't mention the plot card in the open play rules.
Another thing worth pointing out is that in the Nemesis rules section, it does also mention that the Rivals deck you choose has to either have the universal symbol or the matching Grand Alliance, which we haven't seen that mentioned anywhere.
I think that's possibly the most exciting and interesting thing in the whole release, is that it says it's got to have the same Grand Alliance symbol as your Rivals deck, as your warband, and there haven't been any.
No.
It makes us wonder whether we might see some Grand Alliance
Rivals decks.
It's
going to be quite funky. I think I quite like that.
Some potential for some interesting
design space.
Yeah, exactly. Always interesting. We're really enjoying the Nemesis play. It'd be quite nice to have some slight variation.
And talking about Rivals decks and plot cards, there is one plot card in the box.
What?
And it's for Ephlim's Pandemonium.
Yes, so they come with their own little plot card, which is all about the changes.
The changes,
yes. So various things happen with your changes in the game, which we'll cover in another video. But that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And so they are one of 3 warbands that have their own plot cards.
Yep. Them, Mad Mob, and Kagra's Ravagers, and that's it so far. So yeah. So as far as the models themselves go, you've got the 5 plastic Tzeentch fighters and the 3 Stormcast fighters as always. How did you find assembling and painting them?
Well,
yeah. Bear in mind, these are all meant to be push fit. They're all meant to just be pushed together. You don't need glue or anything.
2 of them went together really nicely, and the third one didn't. So the flying one did not go together so well. It still has quite a big crack in it because I'm really bad at sorting it out, and I don't know, by the time I realised it was too late to do it.
You're done. I've already sprayed it.
Exactly, pretty much. So it wasn't the easiest. I did actually try and glue it in the end, and I think I did fill in the gap with a bit of glue. But it's as usual, I screwed it up. I am the lowest common denominator for building, so I kind of feel if I can do it, it must not be too bad. So 2 of them are fine, but the third one was tricky.
The Tzeentch ones, one of them is literally a one-piece model, so that one was dead easy to put in.
I could probably do that.
About 3 of the other 4 made me want to give up.
Okay,
really,
just give up.
Just give up. Just with everything. I just want to lay down and sob. Okay. Some of them were. Ephlim herself was particularly frustrating to try and put together because there's like pieces you put in, but then other pieces go on to hold those pieces in place. And there's like one arm comes from behind and then comes around underneath another arm and in front. And there was one model that you have to. It's like the chicken guy who's got his back, his legs of the thing doing casting the spell. And he's got 2 long arms. Those are all really just generic fitting joints.
They don't push fit.
They are push fit. Normally with the push fit stuff, it goes in a particular way and it locks into that position. With these ones, it didn't. So you had to try and
get the angles,
glue him and hold him onto the base. Quite frustrating.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to say the two that were okay. I was quite impressed actually. They did have a thing where you had to push something into something to make.
Yeah.
But you could push one bit into it and then push the other bit into it afterwards.
Yeah.
You weren't trying to do 3 bits at once. So
yeah.
that was better.
Yeah,
I know they lulled me into a false sense of security because I think they were the first two.
Yeah, and the last one. No.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice models though. I have enjoyed painting them. They've got quite a lot of detail on them, which can be a bit frustrating. Yeah. But they are nice to paint. The bases are nice on the.
These ones are quite basic. They're just sort of like stone, and they've got the odd bit of like magical wispy stuff and stuff like that. But I think it's because the models themselves are quite dramatic and colourful, so you don't want too much on the base to distract.
The Stormcast's got your sort of standard bits of fallen masonry.
And some mud,
which I quite like.
And then we come on to the main rules changes of this season.
Not too many, although they have chucked in a couple of new actions that you've probably seen on the Warhammer Community article.
Yeah.
But we can now, as well as doing our charging, our attacking, our moving and going on guard, we can now stun and barge.
So stun is basically when you stand next to someone, you can just nut them and it gives them a stagger token.
Barge is you can run up to them and nut them. It's basically like a charge action, but instead of attacking, you do a stun action. So it's a charge.
And you don't get a charge token. So it's always worth remembering as well. You just get the move token. Yeah. So it's not like you've expended their activation.
They could still attack.
They could still attack afterwards.
And it is a super action.
Yeah.
Which it's perhaps worth bearing in mind. So you can't do it after a charge, which you couldn't anyway because it was moved. So my first thought was that was a bit rubbish. I couldn't really see why you'd want to charge. Why would you not charge? Why would you not attack and try and do some damage? But then the more I thought about it, there are circumstances where I think you might want to. If you've got most warbands have got weak fighters. Yeah. Who invariably don't. If you've got like a tools 2-sword attack, then you might as well, at least soften it up. If you've got one big fighter who's going to do a charge on the fourth activation, you might as well stagger them. I know you're not such a big fan of the reroll as me, but I think the reroll can be really strong, especially if you have got like a 3-sword fighter, rolling 3 dice. Being able to reroll one is quite powerful.
Or if you're really gambling for those
Grievous.
If you're fishing for Grievous as well, and you've got a lot of swords, then that reroll could come in handy, and it stops the fighter being able to flip tokens once they're staggered. Because if you're staggered, you can't flip a token.
No, so that could wreck people's objective plans potentially. Certainly in our previous game, I wanted to flip an objective in the last turn of the game, and I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have scored an objective. And
I think it also, once you've staggered a fighter, obviously they stay staggered for the rest of the round, so you get that reroll on every attack you make. Yeah. So if you've got like Molog sitting there, getting him staggered on the very first go, you then can make sure the rest of your attacks are going to be that bit more effective. It would totally be worth it, guys. Well, it would be really good, particularly good with the Claw Pack. They've got quite a lot of objectives that trigger off staggered, and I think they also they inspire. They don't inspire when they're staggered, do they? But they have various things that interact with stagger. Yeah. And they want to assassinate the leader. Yeah. So you can basically and they've got lots of expendable fighters. Yeah. So in that game where I was playing against you with Rippers, the ability to run in and stagger you would be would have been really useful. Yeah, and I think it just means in general for fighters like that, or where there are cards or objectives where you have to have staggered fighters, you don't have to rely on the tokens on the board or cards coming out on your deck. You can just run up and stagger somebody. Yeah. So it just gives you that little bit more reliability, and it's a few more different actions, which helps make things just a little bit more. Yeah, it does. It does make those elite fighters just a little bit more vulnerable. Yeah, because they're going to be people are going to be re-rolling dice against you. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting change. It'd be interesting to see how much it changes the way we play. Yeah. Another interesting change is the salvage rule. Yes. Which is part of the power steps. It's not an action, but it's basically, when you've got a deck, and especially if you're using the older warbands, a lot of the cards are restricted to certain fighters, and you think, well, there's no point taking those because if Basher dies, which he always does, there's no point in having a hard head or whatever it is. But now you can throw them away with the salvage rule. If your fighter is out of action, you've got a restricted card and the fighter is out of action, then you are allowed to, as part of your power step, swap one. Yeah.
Not swap it, but discard one and draw a new one.
Yeah, and you can keep doing that. Obviously, if your opponent then passes, or they play a card, or they flip an objective, or whatever, you can do it again and again and again until you've pretty much got rid of all the cards that you can't use
That
anymore.
would be quite interesting if you had like more than 3 in you.
You know,
Pretty unusual. Well, it could happen, I suppose, if you had a magic warband and you had a couple of spells in your hand, because you can throw away spells as well if you've got no active casters.
Yeah, you do have to have one to start with. It's very careful the way it's worded it as well.
Yeah.
So you have to have wizard to start with. So you can't just take a bunch of spells in a warband with no casters and use that to discard a bunch of cards, so you can just get down to the 5 that you definitely want or whatever it might be. Seemed a bit weird.
It wouldn't even have occurred to me to do that, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think it would. I don't think it'd be particularly useful to do that, but you can't, because it's very careful on its wording to make sure that it's very clear that you have to have a caster who is dead, or all your casters have to be dead, or the fighter who that card is for is out of action. So you can't just set things up to have a bunch of cards to get rid of.
Yeah, and I quite like that, because I think it does open up a little bit of extra space for deck building. I think I was saying to you that more often than not, I'm actually going to make my deck building a bit more tricky, because more often than not, if I've got like 11 or 12 power cards, the first thing I do is almost cut out the 5 specific ones, because they just have less utility, but now they don't.
Yeah. It's in the past it was definitely much more risk. It's still a bit of risk now, but at least you're not going to have that hand bricking up in quite the same way.
No, it's not like I've only got 1 power card in my hand and I can't bloody play it. You're going to actually draw into something useful.
Exactly.
Which is really good. So I like that change. It might give rise to bigger decks, maybe.
Possibly. I guess you wouldn't be so worried about putting 4 or 5 cards in that are for a specific fighter, because if they're dead, you could just discard them.
I think we're going to see. It means we're not going to see so many objectives that will reward you for discarding cards or drawing your power deck like we have in the past. I thought we might be seeing them back, but
probably not.
I don't think we will.
But then I don't know what the chances of you clearing your deck out. I mean, if you're in that position where you're able to discard loads and loads of cards because those fights are dead, you're probably not in a good position anyway. So an extra glory or 2 maybe won't help very much.
One other small change is that they've added an umbrella title for types of hex.
Yep.
So we've now got hazard hexes.
Yep.
Try saying that when you're drunk. And that includes your cover hex and your lethal hexes, but it also includes new snare hexes which now appear on the board. We had snare tokens in the last, and it's got a stagger token on it. It's printed on the board, and that's also under the umbrella hazard hex. But if you run into one of those, you get a stagger token, which is sort of interesting. I'm not sure I particularly feel the need to have one of those on the board.
No.
But they haven't changed the rules about plunder. So you still can't put a snare hex on the board if you plunder anything, and they haven't changed the wording, so it still is a bit ambiguous as to what you can or cannot add a snare token when you plunder. You can't. You can only do an objective hex. But they haven't tightened up the wording there, which I think is a bit disappointing. But I think that's it. Do let us know if you've spotted anything else that we've missed. We will, well, we won't update this video, but we'll take it under advisement anyway.
It was interesting to see that the rule books side by side are very similar now. The layout is very similar. Even the artwork's almost the same around the edges, and they've just added in some little sparkly
I do go through both rule books and look down. But I'm not a very good reader. Ironically,
he gets through a lot of books every night just because he just flips through. He can't read.
I find it very difficult to read solid text. With rules in. Until I'm playing.
It's very dry to do. So
difficult. So hopefully I haven't missed anything, but you never know.
I mean, this is a mid-season sort of a mid-year sort of a release, and they tend to do less changes in that situation. When we move out of the Wyrdhollow into whatever the new realm's going to be, whether it's going to be in Gur or another place, they'll probably change everything again. And everything will get broken.
Yes, we will actually have another video about where it might be going. Because there is a little map in this book. And you will find up there a link that takes you to that video all about the map in the Wyrdhollow box.
So we'll see you soon in the Wyrdhollow. Bye!